technology company that is, as I say, 12 years old, employs about 200 people, and turns over about £100 million a year, which is quite a nice set of things to put in the same sentence together. What we've been doing for these years has primarily been SMS, the delivery of SMS for the purposes of enabling enterprises, and more especially in recent years financial services enterprises, to communicate with their customers with an immediacy and a power that no other medium can deliver, and to make it simple and low risk. Just a word of background. SMS is an immensely powerful medium which is controlled by the mobile operators. You have to work with mobile operators in order to deliver SMS, and working without mobile operators is an inherently difficult and a risky business, notwithstanding some valiant efforts on their part. And therefore, the structure of this industry means that there is a segment of companies, of which mBlox is the largest, which simply protects financial services industries and their marketing agents from that complexity and makes it simple, reliable, low cost and low risk. And we do this on a worldwide basis. We do about 5 billion customer contacts a year worldwide, especially in the United States, Europe and Asia. In recent years, we've added also what's called an over-the-top solution. It doesn't mean it's excessive and loud-mouthed. It means that it permits direct communication between brands and enterprises and the smartphones of consumers, unintermediated or at least facilitated by the mobile operators. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we call about this later on. So the story so far, when we were founded in 1999, we felt that that the SMS opportunity was immediate. It was a now opportunity. People were going to flock to it, and it took about 10 years for that to happen. But today, the financial services industry uses mobile in a whole range of ways. Uses mobile principally using SMS. Most UK high street banks, and now a large number of US banks, use SMS for balance and transaction alerts and queries. Huge volumes. In some cases, in the United States, for example, they are symmetrical. That is, most of the messages that get sent out are actually in response to customer queries. In this country, it's a lot more about proactive alerting. A number of prepaid card vendors like Post Office and Travelex enable the customer to manage their entire prepaid card life cycle over SMS. Crisis management, when the volcano blew in Iceland, when NatWest's payment network went down, SMS was a primary medium for communicating with consumers to explain what was going on, what they could do and how they could help. Payment reminders, if you want the TV license, people will send you a text message just reminding you of your payment. And this is for debt collection and payment reminders, turns out to have something, in some certain circumstances, up to a 70% success rate. A very polite but very effective way of ensuring that people don't become delinquent on their payments. Increasingly, we're seeing organisations like Visa and MasterCard provide person-to-person payment mechanisms. We've seen the recent announcements from the Link organisation, faster payments in the UK, all saying that person-to-person and person-to-enterprise payments will be made. These are almost always backed up with SMS with SMS as well as the app in order to provide receipts and so on. In a number of countries, not so much in the UK, but we're seeing this broadly in the US and also in other parts of the United States, of the American continent. We're seeing two-factor authentication come in with PIN codes being sent to the SMS, so the identity and ownership of the device becomes the second factor in an authentication. I think we must be approaching 10 years that mBlox has been working with MasterCard to provide fraud alerts. The business case for this was just epic, so that they would send you a polite message saying, thank you for buying $6,000 of massage in Bangkok. If you have any questions, call this number. Much cheaper, much more polite than an agent making a phone call. And of course, outbound marketing, but outbound marketing in SMS is governed by the same regulations as any proactive electronic communications. It must always be opted in. It can only be to your customer base. Spam is both illegal and deeply unacceptable. This is not just a UK phenomenon, it's worldwide. These data are from the MEF's latest Global Consumer Survey. What you can see is that just between 2011 and 2012, worldwide, the use by what we might call mobile-savvy consumers of mobile banking went from 57 to 64%. That would have been higher, but some other things that don't concern the UK, like airtime top-ups, have declined. Checking the bank balance in 1 year went from 22 to 33% on mobile. from 22 to 33% worldwide, and that includes a number of countries which are rapidly growing economies. 1/3 of customers use their mobile to check their bank balances. Paying a bill went from 12% to 22%. So this is happening with extraordinary rapidity and on a tremendous scale. What's actually happening, as Stephen said, is that there is a rapidly changing way in which people engage with financial institutions through their mobile, and that change is happening now. And the reason that it's happening now is that smartphones are getting more sophisticated very rapidly, that the networks are moving faster, so the response times are better, that the penetration of smartphones into the economy is much better, is much faster. So over the last 10 years, the typical thing has been the way that you were engaged proactively, the way you would start a conversation, you as a financial institution would start a conversation with the consumer, was via an SMS. And you would do so on the basis, say, of a list which IT or marketing would provide, or some sort of event which had happened to that individual. Your account has gone overdrawn. And that was really either sort of static marketing or something very specific that happened to that individual. And very often what you were inviting them to do, what that push was about, was do something in a different context. Go away and do something. Go to the branch, go to the branch, go home online, whatever. And you kind of hope that it was useful. So two things are happening. One is that the number of ways in which you can proactively start a conversation is growing. So SMS is still the premium channel today, absolutely premium channel. Hands up, those of you in the audience who don't read an SMS within 5 minutes of it arriving. Not one hand, it's a premium channel. In addition, we're now finding ubiquitous new channels, complementary, so-called push, which goes through the Android and iOS operating systems. It has some advantages, it has some disadvantages. It has a slightly different texture to it. It's similar but different. It's a new dialect for communication. The second thing that changes is that the reason you send a message is now, yes, an event, but also for the first time, because of the visibility that modern mobile phones give you, you can base it upon the personal context of the consumer. Plus, you also, as Stephen said, have visibility of the behaviour, and that means you can infer what the customer wants, you can infer what sort of event is relevant, and therefore, on the basis of the desires or interests or relevance of a consumer or a group of consumers, you can send people exactly what they want to hear and avoid sending people things they don't want to hear. So, an understanding of personal context and behaviour changes completely your targeting strategy, and that enables you to change what you want to say. And the third thing that happens is, we're moving rapidly to a point at which people conduct their entire interaction with a financial institution, I mean, apart from going to an ATM and getting money out, say, but they do it on the mobile. People, the era in which people would go online or make phone calls is rapidly ending. So what happens is that from that stimulus, from the beginning of that conversation, the whole conversation stays on the mobile in that place. So the typical action is open the app and do whatever has to be done. Or go online, mobile internet, works fine. Go do what has to be done, or go and do it. And you pretty much, this time, you don't hope it's useful, because of all this context information, you know it's useful. So for banks, this is very exciting. Up until now, it's been in the nature, SMS was available to everybody. Banks could send text messages to anybody. Retailers could send text messages to anybody. It was an open and ubiquitous channel, and it still is today, and that gives it that's part of its extraordinary power. But it's in the nature of push and in the nature of applications that you can only send these sorts of push messages, this other dialect, and you can only, very importantly, pull information back from your app. If you've got an app on the consumer's phone, you have both a channel to start a conversation with them, and you have the ability to extract context. Banking apps will become ubiquitous. Banking apps are and will be trusted with privacy. Banking apps have access to and visibility of a lot of micro segments. For many retailers, for many merchants, that becomes incredibly useful. We can imagine a circumstance in which a brand gives merchandising money to a retailer. That retailer does a deal with the bank, who's their merchant acquirer, which enables them to send a particular merchandising offer into a consumer when they walk into that store. That's a partnership between the bank and between the retailer and the bank that comes from the power of the banking app's ubiquity. Having an app becomes very, very, on the consumer's phone, in a broad split scale, becomes very, very valuable indeed. It opens up all sorts of new partnerships. A lot of what I'm going to say, and I'll say this on the table as well, it's going to be about learning. Mobile engagement is new. It's a new style of communication. It's going to have its own rules, its own texture, its own tone, its own dialect. Don't let anybody say they're an expert. All these questions, what do you say, when do you say it, where should you say it, to whom should you say it? There are no fluent speakers of this new language. There are textbooks, actually there are lots of textbooks. A lot has been learned about SMS, but you know what? That was fine. But we're into, as I showed in my previous slide, we're into a new world. And the whole question of how do you address microsegments? How do you manage microsegments? How do you manage hundreds of microsegments? And how do you use this new style of engagement to deliver value to people, not just to market to them, but to deliver value to them, to provide service to them, to provide such an excellent service to them that they love you and your service to them becomes a form of marketing. That's all to be learned. The only way you're going to learn, there are no experts, so any of you in this room can become experts, and the only way to become an expert is to learn through experimentation. I'm passionate about saying small trials, rapid feedback, rapid turnaround. It's a lesson that's been learned in other parts of the mobile industry. It'll work for you too. So, to wrap up, if you're not doing SMS, finally, I can say this in 2013, yes, you're behind the curve. But apps and smartphones fundamentally change the nature and texture of the conversation that you're going to have, that you're going to start and have with your customers. Banks are in an extraordinary position to use it both for their own purposes and stimulate partnerships. Thank you very much.